Hi everybody, welcome. I'm Terry McMahon, your host on this video tonight from the Citizens Archive Research Project of Objects Unknown, and I'm really glad to be here with you. This is going to be a very interesting video, and I hope you find it useful, and should last about 18 to 20 minutes. I'll try to keep it short. A lot of times I tend to go way too long, but don't worry, we're a work in progress. But let me tell you what this is about. Our channel, Objects Unknown, we've been posting a lot of original research. That's typically all that we do. And as some of you know, we're a citizens research project. And specifically, we really research the space agency archives from NASA and ESA and around the world. Everything from Mercury, even Redstone, the few pictures that exist of that, to Gemini, all the way up through Apollo, Skylab, ISS, Mars missions and beyond, and Space Telescope missions. And we stated that because at least we know generally the images are good, right? And it's pretty exciting stuff, and we believe that that's really where the real rock and roll is. That's where the action is on the topic of is there or is there not an extraterrestrial presence here in our solar system, period. That's the question we are all trying to answer. And the interesting thing, and this is where this video comes in, is, you know, we have always thought about ourselves and our channel and our methods and what we're researching, that really, you know, hey, in some ways we want to be the channel that does good, reasoned research, right? We try not to be an overly sensational channel. You know, we're not posting things that say, hey, you know, American Abrams M1 tank found on Mars, 100% proof aliens exist. We don't do that stuff, or we try not to, even though there are some amazing things to talk about. But that's really been the basis of what we do. We want to offer the community out there at large a place that's trying to do good, reasoned, straightforward research, and hopefully honest research. Now, that doesn't mean we're always going to be right. Of course we're not, but at least that the reasoning is sound, and as we go along, we try to do better and better research. That's the kind of channel we want to be, because we believe, and this is a bit of bias, but we do believe that there is pretty great image evidence and other evidence to suggest, or to outright say, there is some type of alien presence here in our solar system currently. And we're looking over 60 years of data. Okay, you know, that's us. That's what we do. Now, interestingly enough, and I probably shouldn't have been surprised, as we get into this, you know, we have a lot of supporters and a lot of people that love this research just as much as we do. But of course, if you're in this kind of thing, hey, you got to be ready for your detractors, right? You got to be ready for your critics. And of course, this is social media, so you can talk to everyone. And there have been some pretty aggressive, wild critics of some of the stuff we put out. And we pride ourselves thinking, you know, hey, we're putting out really reasoned stuff. But some of these critics, you know, are small-minded, as you and I know. They tend to be kind of pseudo-intellects. They get very offended if you are trying to assert anything about this topic, and just generally negative, kind of haters and trolls, alien shamers. You guys know what I'm talking about. And so, you know, I've been answering some of them in the past weeks, and making a pretty good case, because, hey, if you want to criticize the work, I say, okay, but, you know, expect a response. And we always give very respectful responses normally. One guy we kind of didn't, but that's for another video. But, you know, that's what we believe, because the challenge should be there. And I believe if you make any claims, hey, it's okay, you should be challenged. I'm all for that. But, you know, then I was thinking to myself, and we were talking about today, that honestly, you know, I guess these kinds of critics maybe do serve a valuable purpose. It tends to make you look at your own research and question yourself. Are you doing good, honest work for your community? And so that's valuable, right? It tends to keep it honest. So we decided tonight to directly answer some of these accusations we get from the trolls and haters that look at this research and just cannot accept it. Sorry. But at any rate, so we decided to do that, and I'm glad we're doing it because this is for them. And here's the big question, what I call the elephant in the room, for everybody, actually. One, are the objects that we are pointing out in these images, and there's so many of them, indeed, are they in the images? Or are you just looking at debris, dust, hair, reflections, etc., on the images, and it's pareidolia, has been alleged, and you're just making claims based on that? And, I got to tell you, it drives me crazy. There's a lot of people out there that aren't doing good, honest research, and it is just pareidolia, and the things they're looking at are not there. But we don't want to be those people, right? So we decided to address that, and we want to show how we came to believe and arrived at the conclusion that many of the objects that we're pointing out absolutely are in the photos. It's a big claim. It was said to me yesterday, you can't claim that. How could you possibly prove that? Well, that's what this video is about. So enough speech. Here we go. I'm going to be talking about 3 different things. First, what are the images that led us to believe that these objects are in the photos? They're not just dust, debris, hair, etc. Number 2, we have found, we believe, an object that we've seen on the moon in a crater, and then have seen again the same exact type of object in Earth orbit. That's called corroborative image evidence, right? And so we're going to be looking at those 2 topics, and then we're going to go on to some other things we want you to see that we think are important around this issue. So we're going to get to it right now. What am I talking about? Okay. So our channel, my research, we're always, you probably see, we're talking about a lot of things. There is a class of objects, and this is kind of our new theory that is emerging, that we're behind. We believe that there is a class of objects in the space image archives that has been absolutely overlooked and ignored forever, right? But through the last 17 years of research, again and again and again, we've been coming across examples, and we have real reason to believe that these are real objects. Number 2, that they are alien technology. That's a biased opinion, I know, because we're coming from that worldview. And that these are real objects, and they have something to do with the other objects that are seen by people in our atmosphere. We're starting to believe that there's some kind of transmorphing, kind of shape-shifting type of object that may be delivering these orbs and spheres that we see around. Look, the theory is this, right? The assertion is, hey, look, if you accept the fact there's an alien advanced civilization that is monitoring us, working on the moon, what have you, whatever, then it's not that crazy to believe that they would have a wildly advanced technology from us, and it wouldn't look like anything we would think it would look like. And they would have the ability of kind of transmorphing, shape-shifting type of technology that serves a utilitarian purpose with all of the things that they're doing. So these are some of the objects we've been seeing. You've probably seen some of them, and there's all kinds. We've been showing objects like this that have to do with another type of object. There's an object like this that we're going to, on the moon, that we're going to get to later. We've been showing things that we believe are actually on the moon, and these objects are capable of flight. This is just a small example, but there's all kinds of things. So the question becomes, well, how can you talk about it if you can't really show that those objects are in the photo? So that's going to be the first thing we talk about. And I know this video is going to be a lot of me speechifying. I'm going to provide a lot of pictures, but I want to take you through the first topic. What were some of the objects that led us to believe that, my God, these things are in these images? I'm going to take you to this one. We showed it in an earlier video. For us, it's a typical type of object that we see a lot, and hopefully I'm showing a close-up of it. This is Apollo 15 M 1451. You can see it online. I'll post the URL too. But anyway, this is a typical type of object that we see a lot over the last 60 years of images that we're looking at. And it is this kind of, some call it a snake-like, worm-like type of object. It always tends to have some things that are in common with the other ones we see. They tend to have these phalanged and sometimes curly-cued heads to them. We'll show you some other examples in a second. Very common what we see, these type of objects. Now, and a lot of our research is showing a lot of these in Earth orbit, lunar orbit, all kinds of stuff. Now, the reason I'm using this one as an example, because it's a very important example. It's a sequence of shots that we looked at, and we started noticing. This one appears on the ground at other parts of the moon. It appears to be up above the lunar surface in orbit, and is all around Apollo 15 as they're, of course, orbiting over the moon. Now, then we came across this next shot in sequence. So take a look at the shot I've been talking about, this one right here. You're looking right up at it, and hopefully I'm putting a real close up, so if you're on mobile you can see it, this type of object, which we see a lot of photos, okay? Then now one could say, well, hey, you're just looking at debris on the image, it's just a hair, it's just this, it's just that. Yep, I know. However, until we came across the next shot sequence, we have this one here, and this is the example. This shot was taken just a couple of seconds later after the one that you saw. It was above, apparently, and then this shot was taken of the same object. Now, if you don't see it already, I'll explain it. If you look at this, what do you see? You see this object in a different position, but you also see part of it is below the horizon. Part of it is being hidden by the horizon. Now, just take a moment to think what that means, and hopefully I'm posting a close-up image, so if you're on mobile, you can see it clearly. This is the same object that you saw just a second ago, and I'll bring up another. This is one you saw right here, and a few seconds later another image is taken by Apollo, and this object is here. Part of this object is hidden behind these little hills on the lunar horizon that we see here, and it obviously is, and be showing a close-up now. So what we're looking at is we're seeing part of this object being obscured and hidden by these hills and the horizon from their vantage point where they're taking the shot. That can only mean one thing. And what it means is this object is a real object in the photograph. If it was just a debris overlay on the emulsion or the scan or the image or a hair or this, part of it could not be hidden behind a hill. These little hills could not be hidden behind the horizon from their perspective of Apollo 15, of Apollo taking this shot. And that is frankly amazing. And if you're not going, oh my God, that would be true, then I haven't explained it clearly enough, I think. Part of this object is clearly hidden behind the horizon from their vantage point, these little lunar hills up here. And if that's true, it has to mean that it's a real object in the image. There would be no other, it's not just blending into it. You can clearly see where part of this dips down below the horizon, and then the other part shows itself and comes up. You see that little phalanged curlicue or whatever it is, right? But it does mean this object has to be in the image. So that's groundbreaking. That's stunning. That's amazing, right? It sounds like a small point, but it's not. Therefore, it lends credence and weight to the fact that some of the objects that we're researching are indeed in the image. All right. I want to get to the next one of an object that we believe we've seen on the moon and have also seen in Earth orbit. And I'm going to take you there right now. This right here. This is Apollo I believe, Apollo 12. And I'll get you the number for it too, so you can look it up. 7950, I believe, is the extension on it. Looking down at the moon, they're orbiting, obviously. And what do we see here? Well, I know you can't see it right now, but do you see this little hint of an object up here? I'm going to zoom in and show you, and I'm going to tell you what we think this means. So this object, interestingly enough, look at this. Now, first, one thing I want to show. Now, this object has two qualities to it. The focus it is in for where it is correct. The lighting on it, the angle of the sun hitting on these craters, is correct for where it is. Number three, it's not in the outer focus, meaning just looking at it now as you see the image, things like scratches, hairs, debris, you'll see those pretty readily. You really will. And in their own kind of focus, being on the outer focus, meaning you don't have to zoom in and then they come into focus, right? And so that's a bit of a telltale sign that something is a real object in the image. It's not every telltale sign, but it's one of them. So as you see this one, you can't really even notice it until one starts to zoom in and you come down on the object. Okay, there you go. Take a look at this for a second. Look at its, well, it's stringy, right? Whatever it is. Looks like it has a little bit of structure to it, but again, it kind of looks like a big ball of string, right? Or wire, let's say. Looks wiry, I think that's a good way to put it. And with a little bit of structure, who knows what it could be. Now, keeping that in mind, this is Apollo, this is on the moon. And it's also similar to some of these stringy-like, worm-like type of objects that we've been talking about. All right, this is Apollo. Now, I want to go to, I want to go to a study here that I think you'll find very interesting. And this is years later. I want to go to, before, I want to go to Apollo 7. This is Apollo 7. We're going to show you something. This has two parts to it that are kind of mind-blowing. We have, first of all, found absolute 100% evidence that NASA has airbrushed some photos, because we have found the airbrush photo. You guys have probably seen it. And we found actually what looks to be the original photo that I guess they forgot to delete, as crazy as that sounds. Let's talk about it. And then I'm going to show you the object in the non-airbrushed part of that photo, which is very similar to the one we just showed you on the moon. Let's take a look at it together. All right, this is Apollo 7, ASO 707, 1878. They're looking at Hurricane Gladys in the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this tape is not the part that's actually a big deal. I don't know why that tape's there. Maybe it's hiding something, maybe it's not. Might be because based on the airbrushing they did, which I'm going to show you, who knows what it's hiding, but that's really not it. So look at this photo. All right, I'm going to zoom in here. What do you see? Nothing, right? These red circles we drew on this photo because we're going to show you when we show you the other one. But there's nothing to see, right? There's nothing here. There's no objects there other than our red circles. There's nothing there other than our red circles. So, you know, hey, it's just a big piece of tape, whatever that is. So nothing there. And this has been the public shot for a lot of years. But we went to another archive, and bizarrely enough, we found this one of the exact same shot. And let's bring it up and take a look. Here we go. This is also AS7, the same one we've been looking at and talking about, 1878. Here we go. Same one. The red circle, obviously, we had made. Let's look at the same areas we looked at in the other one. And lo and behold, look what is there. Now, these objects you're seeing, and I'll post some ones that are even clearer for you, where we had drawn the circles. This is where those objects are. So, what is this? Take a look at that. On the other photo, Well, it is absolutely not there. Let's look. Yeah, and I'll show you where that was. That was here. And this is the other photo. That's not there. And if you look at these little clouds in the center here, and you look at the other one, you will see that they took the clouds from behind it and kind of cloned that little cloud bank over it, actually. You can see a little bit of blurring, but this little cloud bank is cloned from another little area right by it. So obviously, why would they do that if this was just simple debris, right? So let's go back and take a look. Here's the area where you're looking at. Let's bring that back up, show you. Okay. And when they took this out, they actually airbrushed a few clouds in there, interesting enough. So what is this object, right? Strange. Now, let's go over here. The other places that we drew those circles, we find these objects that are not in the other photo. And to us, here at our channel, these are important, as is the other one, which we'll explain in a moment why we think these are important. Take a look at these. Now, I haven't seen any other, I'm not a big NASA is airbrushing everything guy. But we are finding some example where that's happening. And so the question becomes, well, it's just because there was debris and they didn't want there to be debris in it. Well, why would you do it on a photo for the public that has a big piece of tape over it? It wouldn't seem like you were saving anything. And, you know, there wasn't a lot of debris in space back at Apollo 7, I'm sure as you all know. So it lends a question, if this was debris, why are they airbrushing it out and kind of cloning little clouds over the object they're taking out to make it look like it was never there? We really believe that some of the things that we're seeing in the Apollo missions, some of these kind of transmorphing, weak R words, shape-shifting things, these little snake-like, worm-like things, we believe maybe could be this, and we may see one in motion. We have a video coming out where we show some great examples of these S-type curves and these snake-like things that are together and then apart, as if they kind of fall apart and then they come back and form something else. So we wonder, logically, is this what we're seeing evidence of right here? Is this a great example of literally what these things are? And they're coming together to form something else? Right here, what we're looking at? It's a big assertion, I know. But what lends credence to that, if you think about it? What lends credence to that, or support to that thought? Well, the fact that they airbrushed all this out. Let's go back and take a look. Why would they airbrush this out? I'm sure I'll hear a lot of feedback about that, but this is the most known public shot. The things I just showed you were in this area. You can see that little cloud bank over there where that object was. And you look in this area, and there are none of them. So, pretty darn interesting. One more point that I think is fascinating in this kind of research would be, I want you to take a look at, again, if you would, the first object right here. This object, this little wiry type object, we think is very, very similar to this object on the moon. And the first object would have been a few years before Apollo 7, before they did this one. So looking at these two objects, this one we're seeing from orbit, obviously, and this one is very similar if you look at it, is it not? So nothing's proof positive of anything, of course, but this is pretty incredible when compared to this object. And we think lends a lot of weight to say that this is a real object, that it is doing something, and it may be this class of object, and these other things that we have shown and will be showing, we believe that these are some type of morphing tech, and completely. And there are other, this is not the only example that we have of these amorphous type little objects that are coming together, and then we see in another shot, we get to see something like this right? Now, there's one other thing I can't show here, but we will be showing. Another thing that really put weight behind this is the fact that there is an ISS EVA video from an astronaut, obviously, and he's just looking around in orbit, about below him, the Earth, beautiful Earth, and all of a sudden these little orbs fly in at high speed, and we broke that video down, and we found a point where those orbs come together really quickly, and in these frames that we broke down, we see those orbs actually forming a little snake-like kind of ball of snake-like, worm-like type of object right in the video, and it was stunning. But that's the reasoning behind what we're tracking here. We believe there may be a class of UFO object, if it's alien tech, that has been overlooked. Now, let me say, there is lots of dirt on these images. There's lots of debris. There's lots of stuff that isn't anything. But that doesn't mean everything's nothing. And this was the debate I had with a fellow last night. It doesn't mean everything's nothing. And so I tried to explain to him, hey, let me tell you why we think this object may be an object. He wasn't having it. So I wanted to take this video, and I just wanted to end with and take you through what we've been saying. Objects like this, we feel is amazing when we see this object, and part of it is obscured behind the horizon, completely giving some impetus to the fact that it's a real object. Okay, objects like this being seen on the moon, and there are many others, being very close to these kind of objects being seen in Earth orbit. This photo being completely airbrushed for some particular reason. I think we can all guess what that reason is. This is a photo where those objects were and all that other stuff, but been completely, the clouds cloned out a little bit, things moved around, airbrushed around to take those out. I don't see any real reason for it. I mean, you could always come up with a reason. But those are the things we're talking about. And each one of these points, if you think about what it means to the research of any of this at all, is pretty stunning. And, quite frankly, pretty supportive. And so we at least wanted to explain our base reasoning. Do we have reason to think some of these are real objects in these videos? I say absolutely. And I went through some of the reasoning here tonight. Why would we say such a thing? This isn't clickbait, as we were accused of the other day. My God, there's nothing to even click through. We post videos, so you can see them right then and there. This isn't sensational stuff. We're trying to do good citizen research, and we at least wanted to give you some of the reasoning behind it. So, hey, thanks for listening. I'm sure this went way over my timeline, and I apologize if it did. But, if you're into this kind of research and it's important to you, well, it's important, people that are putting out things and doing original research, that they, they start talking about how they're arriving at the conclusions at which they're arriving. Hey, everything is subject to criticism, and that's cool. But it's important for us to come back and say, let me tell you why we're saying this. So, thanks for listening. I hope that was helpful. This was helpful to anybody that has been wondering about these things or had the same questions. But glad you're here as always. I'm Terry McMahon, and this is Objects Unknown.